Hello and welcome to what is kind of an impromptu video because I was not expecting this short story to release today. It is a short story, A Whisper of Warning by Delilah S. Dawson for World of Warcraft. It is kind of a prequel to the Dark Heart questline, which is releasing soon, which is in itself kind of a prologue to the whole War Within thing. So this is kind of, technically, when you think about it, the first piece of War Within narrative content we've been treated to. I adore this time leading up to an expansion where we start getting things like short stories and animated shorts. They're some of my absolute favourite treats. Sometimes we get treated to a little audio drama as well. I remember there was a really good one in Legion with Gul'dan approaching the Broken Shore. I love it because there are certain types of narratives in World of Warcraft which are best told through other mediums. Like, of course, World of Warcraft has always had this problem of too much of a lore is told in outside media. It is a legitimate problem, but then there's also things like, for instance, this story, the perfect example. How would you tell this story within World of Warcraft in its quest-based system when the adventurer has no presence in the story? It is purely a story about a mother and her son and her husband. There's no action scenes. Like, if they really wanted to shoehorn it into the game, they could, but it would just be like, oh, adventurer, champion, would you mind going and fetching the wine for us? And then you would pick up the wine and walk it over to them while the dialogue was playing. No, I much prefer this manner of telling this kind of story. So let's get into it. First of all, we'll start with, I have checked some of, like, the reactions in the comments section for gripes, and there have been a couple of people talking about there's a lore error where it's mentioned that Iridikron got the Dark Heart from Aberrus, when actually he's never been to Aberrus. He got it from, I forget what it's called, the little Drakfir starting area. So that's unfortunate if that's true. I'll be honest, I wasn't entirely present for most of Dragonflight, so I'm not the expert to ask on this particular one. It's always possible that this short story was written before those details were finalized, and it's just been held back. Like, you get the impression that the War Within and this entire World Soul saga has been in development for a while, maybe alongside Dragonflight, but either way, if that is an error, it should have been fixed before publication. I've also seen some talk about the idea that it's weird that Arator is living in Silvermoon and is part of a horde when his father is the Lord Commander, kind of like leading the Alliance right now, or leading, I guess, at least the humans in the Alliance, leading Stormwind, and his mother is the leader of the Void Elves. And, you know, even before they were in these positions of power, they were both staunch Alliance people. So it's interesting that Arator considers himself, you know, a blood elf and lives in Silvermoon. I don't think that's a problem. I do find it interesting. And the last thing, I have seen someone being like, I can't get over the fact that the leader of the Alliance is just chilling in Silvermoon while Illyria needs an escort. I think it's made pretty clear why Illyria needs an escort, because she isn't trusted, whereas the Horde and the Alliance are on such great speaking terms right now that I think it makes sense that, you know, Turalyon is here on business, and that's not a weird thing. The one thing I will say is it would have been nice if there was maybe a line included like, oh, you know, Lor'themar would have known that Turalyon was here, but he didn't see fit to warn Illyria because, you know, they're not best buds right now. But yeah, those are other people's criticisms. I bring them up because they're not necessarily the things that I was thinking while I was reading this. I was mostly just absorbed in the character writing of it all. I love that we get this story from Illyria's perspective for a few reasons. Firstly, it's always fascinating getting Illyria POV stuff because of the Void and how that's influencing her or maybe not influencing her. I think it's really important that we check in with Illyria because I think there's sometimes some misconception of, oh, you know, she's been corrupted by the Void and it may be influencing her, but we get to see the reality of it, which is she's been touched by the Void and it can whisper to her, but she's still very much in control, at least at this point in the story. Like, obviously the whispers will be getting to her, they will be affecting her psyche, but you get the impression that she knows that the whispers are whispering lies to her to try and corrupt her, and so she's subconsciously always fighting that. And that's really cool. Also, oh my god, I've just realised that this short story is called The Voices Within, and it's a prelude to The War Within. Okay, thanks. Yeah, got it. Another reason why I love the fact that we get stories like this from the perspective of NPCs is because we don't always get to see the full emotional weight of what they've been through and how those things will affect them in full force in game. The video game's storytelling is very much plot focused, very much focused on driving the world forward, chasing objectives, dealing with, missions, that kind of thing. Whereas with a short story like this, you can take the time to be like, let's take Illyria to Silvermoon and explore how it feels to be an outsider and an enemy and to be not trusted by the very people within this place that fundamentally part of you still believes is your home. It's also really cool that they've taken the time to explore the weird family dynamic between Illyria, Turalyon, and Arator, because for a while there they were trying to do this thing where they were like, Illyria's void infused and Turalyon's light infused, but their love can overcome it and everything is still okay between them. That's not a story we're going down. But now it definitely seems like they're exploring. That would obviously cause some kind of rift in their relationship no matter how hard they tried. The fact that they cannot physically touch each other. And a greater part of this as well is Arator has been mostly forgotten as a character since Burning Crusade. I believe he showed up in Legion during the 7.3 patches, I want to say. But something I'm finding really cool with The War Within is they seem to be kind of looking towards the next generation of Warcraft characters to make sure that we're not just regurgitating the same characters over and over again and kind of like ruining any kind of like nice arcs of storytelling by undermining them with new arcs of storytelling. Like you see that kind of stuff in soap operas all the time, and I bring up soap operas not because I'm a connoisseur of them by any means, but just because while reading through this I did have a thought of like, World of Warcraft is a little bit like a soap opera in the same way that the MCU, or I guess just Marvel comics, are a little bit like a soap opera, in that they're this universe where stories have been told for so long that there is so much backstory and so much complex relationships, some of which may or may not be conflicting in terms of how characters may have reacted to situations. There may have been some oversights with how some characters have reacted to situations, such as, Lor'themar is very suspicious of Illyria because of what happened with her in the Sunwell, and yet he invited her to his wedding in Suramar. So now you've got to adapt this story to this weird relationship where they're kind of friends and then also kind of potential enemies. Do you see what I mean when I say I compare it to like a soap opera in that sense? Like there's so much history with the different plots and the different things that have happened between these different characters during these different plot lines that it's got a bit messy. But also time has passed, so I like that we're now seeing an older Arator. Not that he was ever super young to begin with, but he's very much depicted in this short story as like, he's a man now. He's a knight, and obviously a lot of this is just because Illyria hasn't seen much of him since he was very little. But I think it is meant to tell a reader as well, like, hey, Arator's like a dude who we're going to be seeing more of. And similarly, we've had some other younger characters get aged up over time and are now entering the story in their own way. I love that World of Warcraft is a game with a story long enough that that can just happen and be natural. One detail which I noticed, by the way, throughout this short story was how Silvermoon was being described as being under reconstruction. I particularly loved a line where Illyria said that the roads were being recobbled, but they still felt like the roads that she had walked down many years before. This is interesting to me because if I remember rightly, Midnight, the expansion after the War Within, is meant to be taking place around this kind of area in the Eastern Kingdoms, and is meant to be about uniting the elven factions, which still feels a little nebulous and weird to hear, but also is starting to make sense in terms of where the narrative is heading. But I just find it interesting because it hints to me at like, we're going to see a new version of Silvermoon. They're not just going to pull up the Burning Crusade Blood Elf starter zone of Silvermoon. I don't think they're even just going to up-res it. They're going to obviously like reconstruct parts of it which have been rubble in the past, but I think they might also just straight up reimagine it at a larger scale to match more modern cities in the game. Like, you compare the scale of Suramar with the scale of Silvermoon. So yeah, that's what I'm really hoping they do. And it would be cool if that was like the faction hub for that expansion. I like the idea of one of Midnight's like core gameplay features being that there is now a third faction. It's not just Alliance and Horde, but it's Alliance, Horde, and like the Elven tribes or whatever. And like, if you're a night elf, you're no longer part of the alliance, you're part of the elven tribes. Like, they move some races, and they kind of like, because it does feel a little weird to be like, oh yeah, it's okay for for Arator to live in Silvermoon and decide to be a blood elf, even though his parents are key figures in the alliance, two rival factions who have been at war in the past, because it's elf shit. Anyway, that's more speculating on the game. Let's get back to this short story. Now, I will admit my coincidence senses are tingling when Illyria is going to visit Arator and Terralion just happens to be there. Like, what are the chances? But I guess suspension of disbelief is a necessity here. And I love the fact that she keeps meaning to be like, I don't eavesdrop. Eavesdropping isn't healthy. I'm just going to walk in. And then she catches another snatch of conversation. She's like, wait a second, I've got to see where this leads. But she's like, no, this is going to hurt if I keep eavesdropping and it's not fair. I'm going to walk in. And then she catches another snatch of conversation and avoids like, they hate you. They are repulsed by you. I think that shows that while on a conscious level, Illyria is not listening to those whispers and is kind of ignoring them throughout most of the story, on a subconscious level they are affecting her. Anyway, she does eventually walk in, and we get a glimpse of the weird family dynamic of a light-infused dad and a void-infused mom, who very much love each other but have a lot of things unsaid between them, and Arator, who's missed them both because they kind of had to abandon him when he was a child. Definitely nothing like a soap opera. I think what I admire most about this entire dynamic and the way this entire short story is written is no one is yelling at anyone else, no one is getting irrationally angry or letting feelings take control. They are all adults. Everyone in the room is an adult who can admit to themselves that they are feeling a certain way and also see the logic behind why they are feeling that way and why it would be rash and unhealthy to express it in an unhealthy way, and yet still have these moments of awkwardness and upsetting each other. It's realistic. This whole idea that even with the best of intentions, people can still be at odds with the people that they love the most. It's so good. Now for my next thing, depending on how many people in the World of Warcraft community have found this video and may or may not be listening to it, people may think I'm crazy for this or may not, or think it doesn't matter at all. I think Arator might be, maybe, a little gay. For those of you who don't know, I'm bi, so I kind of have this queer eye with which I read all fiction, and I very much fall into the trap of, oh, this character could be queer, this character could be bi, this character could be gay, that would be really cool, and then a lot of times it doesn't pan out, but something about the militaristic hero figure dad asking after his son or teasing him about, well, wouldn't you like, wouldn't you like to marry one of the twins? And then later on, his mother reinforcing that. I don't want you to be a knight. I don't want you to be going to war. I want you to, have girlfriends and marry the twins, and seeing how uncomfortable and awkward that makes him. On one level, that's normal because your parent is asking after something that's a very personal matter to you. But on another, I don't know, he says, I'm not thinking about girls. I'm just thinking about my fellow knights. Like, your fellow knights. Anyway, it's neither here nor there, but I think it would be sweet. Also, it would just be funny, given that in the past, a large portion of the player base have associated male blood elves with being effeminate and girly and gay and stuff. Just be like, yeah, this one is. And what about it? Anyway, back on track. The conversation that Illyria has with Arator about being a knight and trying to keep him out of his coming conflict that she can see approaching because she's afraid of him getting hurt or dying is quite tragic. It wraps back into that duality of feeling versus, I guess, love versus duty, and the idea that Arator is a grown man and is like, come on, I can no more easily abandon my duty than you can yours. And I do find it quite tragic as well when Illyria is looking around at Silvermoon and at how some of its residents feel safe within the walls to be able to lead normal lives, and she knows that that's a lie, that they're not safe, and that she's been fighting for so long for Azeroth to be a world that is safe, and in Arator she wishes that he could be one of those people of a generation that is able to feel safe and have a normal life, and not have to lead this militaristic life of preparing for war against unknown forces. Oh, before I forget, by the way, I really love Arator's tattoos he unveils, where on his arms he's got, is it dragons? And one is light and one is dark, and I think they're meant to symbolize his parents. That's so cool. Anyway, I am running out of things to talk about for this short story. I just mainly wanted to make this quick video talking about my reaction to it. I haven't done this with World of Warcraft short stories in the past, but I might do more in future. To be fair, I did do this for the Afterlives animations before Shadowlands, so it's not completely unprecedented. But hey, let me know what you thought about it, if you like. You don't have to. And I will see you in whatever I make next.